Sussex, Essex, from the Old English, Sussex, is an historic county in the southeast of England. The foundation of the Kingdom of Sussex is recorded by the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle for the year AD 477, saying that Il arrived at a place called Simon Shore in 3 ships with his 3 sons and killed or put to flight the local inhabitants. The foundation story is regarded as somewhat of a myth by most historians, although the archaeology suggests that Saxons did start to settle in the area in the late 5th century. The Kingdom of Sussex became the County of Sussex, then after the coming of Christianity. The see, originally founded in Chelsea, was moved to Chichester in the 11th century. The See of Chichester was coterminous with the county borders. In the 12th century the see was split into 2 archdeaconries centred at Chichester and Lewes. Since its creation in the 5th century, Sussex has been subject to periodic reform of its local governance. After the Reform Act of 1832, Sussex was divided into the Eastern Division and the Western Division. These divisions were coterminous with the 2 archdeaconries of Chichester and Lewes. In 1889, following the Local Government Act 1888, using those same boundaries, Sussex was divided into 2 administrative counties, East Sussex and West Sussex, together with 3 self-governing county boroughs, Brighton, Eastbourne and Hastings. In 1974, under the Local Government Act 1972, the county boundaries were revised with the Mid-Sussex area of East Grinstead, Haywards Heath, Burgess Hill and Hassocks being transferred from East Sussex into West Sussex, along with Crawley and the Gatwick area that was formerly part of Surrey local authority, and in 2000, Brighton and Hove was given city status. There continue to be a range of organisations that still operate within the ancient borders of Sussex, although it is now the 2 counties of East and West Sussex, such as the Diocese of Chichester, Sussex Police, the Sussex Archaeological Society, the Sussex History Society and the Sussex Wildlife Trust Association. In 2010, the Sussex Association was established as a branch of the Association of British Counties, which is a society dedicated to promoting awareness of the continuing importance of the 86 historic counties of Great Britain. Although the name Sussex is derived from the Saxon period between AD 477 to 1066, the history of human habitation in Sussex goes back to the Old Stone Age. Sussex has been occupied since those times, and although it has been an industrious county, it has succumbed to various persecutions, wars, invasions, political unrest and migrations throughout its long history. Prehistoric Sussex. Stone Age. In 1993, a human-like tibia was found at Boxgrove near Chichester. Then in 1996, further hominid remains were found. 2 incisor teeth from a single individual recovered from the lower freshwater deposits at the site. The remains came to be known as Boxgrove man, and are thought to be a species known as Homo heidelbergensis. Boxgrove man apparently lived in a temperate stage immediately prior to the Anglian glaciation. In the Lower Paleolithic period between 524,000 and 478,000 years ago. In 1900, Upper Paleolithic flintwork was found at a site in the Beedings. Then in 2007-8, early Upper Paleolithic archaeology was found at the same site. The archaeology at the Beedings spans a crucial cultural transition in the European Paleolithic and therefore provides an important new dataset for the analysis of late Neanderthal groups in Northern Europe and their replacement by modern human populations. It is believed that during the Mesolithic age nomadic hunters arrived in Sussex from Europe. At the time, Britain was still connected to the continent. However, the ice sheets over northern Europe were melting rapidly and causing the gradual rising of sea levels, which eventually led to the forming of the Straits of Dover, effectively cutting off the Mesolithic people of Sussex from the continent. There have been archaeological finds from these people, mostly in the central Wealden area to the north of the Downs. Large amounts of knives, scrapers, arrowheads and other tools have been found. Close to the River Ouse near Sharp's Bridge, a polished axe fragments, a chisel and other examples of Neolithic flintwork have been found. The fact that these implements were found close to the River Ouse suggests that some land clearance may have taken place in the river valley during the Neolithic period. From about 4300 BC to about 3400 BC, the mining of flint for use locally and also for wider trade was a major activity in Neolithic Sussex. There was also a Neolithic pottery industry, with styles of pot reminiscent of finds elsewhere, such as Hembury and Grimston, Lisle Hill. Bronze Age. The transition from the late Neolithic to the early Bronze Age in Sussex is marked by the appearance of beaker pottery. There have been several finds, including some in beaker settlements. A significant settlement was one discovered near Beachy Head in 1909. The site was partially excavated in 1970 and the finds included pottery, flints, post settings, shallow pits and a midden. The presence of beaker pottery provides the first evidence of the migration of people from northern Europe since the early Neolithic period. Although some prehistorians now doubt the existence of the beaker people as migrants and suggest that it was possible that the beaker culture may have just been a new development of the local Neolithic people. From the Bronze Age, settlements and burial sites have left their mark throughout Sussex. Iron Age. There are over 50 Iron Age sites that are known throughout the Sussex Downs. Probably the best known are the hill forts such as Sisbury Ring. A small number of agricultural settlements, or farmsteads, have been excavated on a large scale. The results of these excavations have provided a picture of the economy, based on mixed farming. Artifacts such as iron plowshares and sickles were excavated. The presence of animal bones, particularly cattle and sheep, attests to the pastoral element to their economy. Various items have been found that indicate that they used to spin and weave the wool they produced. The Sussex Iron Age dweller supplemented their diet with marine shellfish, the remains of which have been found on several sites. Towards the end of the Iron Age in 75 BC, people from the Attribution, one of the tribes of the Belgae, a mix of Celtic and German stock, started invading and occupying southern Britain. This was followed by an invasion by the Roman army under Julius Caesar that temporarily occupied the southeast in 55 BC. Then soon after the first Roman invasion had ended, the Celtic Regnenses tribe under their leader Commius occupied the Manhood Peninsula. Tincomaris and then Cagiagicabnes followed Commius as rulers of the Regnenses. At the time of the Roman conquest in AD 43, there was an oppidum in the southern part of their territory, probably in the Selsey region. Roman Sussex. After the Roman invasion, Cagiagicabnes was placed or confirmed by the Romans as ruler of the Regnenses, and he took the name Tiberius Claudius Cagiagicabnes, and claimed to be Rex Magnus Britanniae. His name is mentioned on two exceptionally early Roman inscriptions in his capital of Noviomagus Reginorin. There are a variety of remains in the county from Roman times. Coin hoards and decorated pottery have been found. There are examples of Roman roads such as Chichester to Silchester Way, Chichester to London Stane Street. Also a variety of buildings, the best known being Bigna Roman Villa, Fishbourne Roman Palace, and Aritum. The coast of Roman Britain had a series of defensive forts on them, and towards the end of the Roman occupation the coast was subject to raids by Saxons. Additional forts were built against the Saxon threat, an example in Sussex being Anderitum. The coastal defences were supervised by the Count of the Saxon Shore. There is some suggestion that around the beginning of the 4th century the Roman authorities recruited mercenaries from the German homelands to defend the southern and eastern coasts of Britain. The area they defended was known as the Saxon Shore. It is possible that these mercenaries remained after the departure of the Roman army and merged with the eventual Anglo-Saxon invaders. Saxon Sussex. Norman Sussex. On Friday 13 October 1066, Harold Godwinson and his English army arrived at Senlac Hill, just outside Hastings, to face William of Normandy and his invading army. On 14 October 1066, during the ensuing battle, Harold was killed and the English defeated. It is likely that all the fighting men of Sussex were at the battle, as the county's fens were decimated and any that survived had their lands confiscated. The Normans buried their dead in mass graves. There were reports that the bones of some of the English dead were still being found on the hillside some years later. It was believed that it would not be possible to recover any remaining bones from the battlefield area in modern times, as they would have disappeared due to the acidic soil. However, a skeleton that was found in a medieval cemetery, and originally thought to be associated with the 13th century Battle of Lewes, turned out to be contemporary with the Norman invasion. Skeleton 180 had sustained 6 fatal sword cuts to the back of the skull and was one of 5 skeletons that had suffered violent trauma. Skeleton 180 was one of 123 remains found in a medieval cemetery belonging to the Hospital of St. Nicholas, which was run by monks from Lewes Priory. Many of the excavated skeletons exhibited the telltale signs of a range of diseases common in that era, including leprosy. But only skeleton 180 had died from head injuries. The reason why historians had originally thought that skeleton 180 was involved in the Battle of Lewes is because the hospital was situated at the epicenter of the conflict. What had puzzled archaeologists, though, was that most of the victims of the battle had been buried in mass grave pits dug next to the battle itself. These pits had been discovered by road builders in the 19th century. Analysis now continues on the other remains found at the site of the hospital, to try and build up a more accurate picture of who the individuals were. William built Battle Abbey at the site of the Battle of Hastings, and the exact spot where Harold fell was marked by the high altar. Norman influence was already strong in Sussex before the conquest. The Abbey of Fecamp had interest in the harbours of Hastings, Rye, Winchelsea and Stenning, while the estate of Bosham was held by a Norman chaplain to Edward the Confessor. After the Norman conquest, the 387 manors that had been in Saxon hands were replaced by just 16 heads of manors. The 16 people in charge of the manors were known as the tenentes in capita, in other words, the chief tenants who held their land directly from the crown. The list includes 9 ecclesiasticals, although the portion of their landholding is quite small and was virtually no different from that under Edward the Confessor. 2 of the lords were Englishmen, Ode, who had been a pre-conquest treasurer, and his brother Eldred. This means that 353 of the 387 manors in Sussex would have been wrested from their Saxon owners and given to Norman lords by William the Conqueror. The county was of great importance to the Normans, Hastings and Pevensey being on the most direct route for Normandy. Because of this, the county was divided into 5 new baronies, called rapes, each with at least one town and a castle. This enabled the ruling group of Normans to control the manorial revenues and thus the greater part of the county's wealth. William the Conqueror gave these rapes to 5 of his most trusted barons: Roger of Montgomery, the combined rapes of Chichester and Arundel; William de Braose, rape of Bramber; William de Warenne, rape of Lewes; Robert, Count of Mortain, rape of Pevensey; Robert, Count of Eu, rape of Hastings. Historically, the land holdings of each Saxon lord had been scattered, but now the lords' lands were determined by the borders of the rape. The unit of land, known as the Hyde, in Sussex had 8 instead of the usual 4 virgates. The county boundary was long and somewhat indeterminate on the north, owing to the dense forest of Andreds's Weald. Evidence of this is seen in Domesday Book by the survey of Worth and Lodsworth under Surrey, and also by the fact that as late as 1834 the present parishes of North and South Amersham in Sussex were part of Hampshire. Sussex under the Plantagenets. During the Hundred Years' War, Sussex found itself on the front line, convenient both for intended invasions and retaliatory expeditions by licensed French pirates. Hastings, Rye and Winchelsea were all burnt during this period, and all three towns became part of the Cinque Ports, a loose federation for supplying ships for the country's security. Also at this time, Amberley and Bodiam castles were built to defend the upper reaches of navigable rivers. Early modern Sussex. Like the rest of the country, the Church of England split with Rome during the reign of Henry VIII was felt in Sussex. In 1538 there was a royal order for the demolition of the shrine of St. Richard, in Chichester Cathedral, with Thomas Cromwell saying that there was a certain kind of idolatry about the shrine. In the reign of Queen Mary, 41 people in Sussex were burnt at the stake for their Protestant beliefs. Elizabeth re-established the break with Rome when she passed the 1559 Acts of Supremacy and Uniformity. Under Elizabeth I, religious intolerance continued, albeit on a lesser scale, with several people being executed for their Catholic beliefs. Sussex escaped the worst ravages of the English Civil War, although in 1642 there were sieges at Arundel and Chichester, and a skirmish at Haywards Heath when royalists marching towards Lewes were intercepted by local parliamentarians. The royalists were routed with around 200 killed or taken prisoner. Despite its being under parliamentarian control, Charles II was able to journey through the county after the Battle of Worcester in 1651, to make his escape to France from the port of Shoreham. Late modern and contemporary Sussex. The Sussex women are very nice in their dress and in their houses. The men and boys wear smock frocks more than they do in some counties. William Cobbett. 1822. The Sussex coast was greatly modified by the social movement of sea bathing for health, which became fashionable among the wealthy in the second half of the 18th century. Resorts developed all along the coast, including at Brighton, Hastings, Worthing, and Bognor. At the beginning of the 19th century, agricultural laborious conditions took a turn for the worse, with an increasing amount of them becoming unemployed. Those in work faced their wages being forced down. Conditions became so bad that it was even reported to the House of Lords in 1830 that 4 harvest labourers had been found dead of starvation. The deteriorating conditions of work for the agricultural labour eventually triggered riots, first in neighbouring Kent, and then in Sussex, where they lasted for several weeks, although the unrest continued until 1832 and became known as the Swing Riots. Railways spread across Sussex in the 19th century, and county councils were created for Sussex's eastern and western divisions in 1889. During World War I, on the eve of the Battle of the Somme on 30 June 1916, the Royal Sussex Regiment took part in the Battle of the Boar's Head at Richebourg-la-Vouée. The day subsequently became known as the day Sussex died. Over a period of less than 5 hours, the 17 officers and 349 men were killed, including 12 sets of brothers, including 3 from one family. A further 1,000 men were wounded or taken prisoner. With the declaration of the World War II, Sussex found itself part of the country's front line, with its airfields playing a key role in the Battle of Britain, and with its towns being some of the most frequently bombed. As the Sussex Regiment served overseas, the defence of the county was undertaken by units of the Home Guard with help from the 1st Canadian Army. During the lead-up to the D-Day landings, the people of Sussex were witness to the build-up of military personnel and materials, including the assembly of landing crafts and construction of Mulberry harbours off the county's coast. In the post-war era, the New Towns Act 1946 designated Crawley as the site of a new town. As part of the Local Government Act 1972, the eastern and western divisions of Sussex were made into the ceremonial counties of East and West Sussex in 1974. Boundaries were changed, and a large part of the Rape of Lewes was transferred from the Eastern Division into West Sussex, along with Gatwick Airport. which was historically part of the county of Surrey.